The hotel staff at the Crescent Inn knew better than to book anyone into room 206. Over the years, there were whispers of strange occurrences, items moving on their own, cold drafts, whispers in the walls. Room 206 was strictly off limits. The last time a guest stayed there, he checked out in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat and swearing he heard someone breathing next to him in the dark. Most guests didn't even know the room existed, but every now and then someone would ask about it. Today was one of those days. It was late afternoon when she arrived. An old woman, stooped and frail, but with a presence that made the receptionist, Julia, uneasy. Her face was pale, her eyes sunken, but it was the way she smiled that freaked Julia out. "I need the key to room 206, the woman said in a voice that cracked with age. Julia blinked, certain she hadn't heard her correctly. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We don't use that room. It's out of service." The woman's eyes, clouded yet piercing, fixed on Julia. "That room belongs to me. I was born there." The lobby seemed to grow colder. Julia hesitated, the old stories of room 206 flashing through her mind. Still, the woman didn't look dangerous, just strange. "Are you sure you wouldn't prefer a different room?" Julia offered, hoping to steer her away. The old woman shook her head slowly. "I must stay in room 206. Her voice carried a weight, an unspoken demand. Julia felt a strange pull to obey, her fingers moving before she could stop herself. She reached for the key and handed it over. Julia's fingers brushed the old woman's skin. It was ice cold. Without another word, the woman took the key, her frail hand steady, and slowly shuffled toward the elevator. As she stepped inside, the elevator doors closed with a soft ding, leaving Julia standing frozen in place. Hours passed and the night shift began. Julia couldn't shake the unease she felt. Her eyes kept drifting to the elevator, to the number 206 glowing dimly on the room's old-fashioned brass tag hanging on the wall behind the counter. It was nearing midnight when the hotel's phone rang. "Front desk," Julia answered, her voice strained. "She's still in there," whispered a raspy voice on the other end. Julia's stomach lurched. "Who is this?" Silence. She hung up and immediately called the room. The phone rang and rang, echoing in the empty halls. No answer. Julia couldn't ignore it any longer. She had to check on the woman. Grabbing a flashlight from behind the desk, she made her way to the second floor. The hallway felt longer than usual, the walls closing in as she neared room 206. When she reached the door, Julia noticed something strange. The temperature had dropped dramatically. Her breath came out in visible puffs, the hairs on her neck standing up. With trembling hands, she knocked. No answer. "Ma'am?" she called in an almost whisper. Still nothing. With her heart pounding, she slid the key into the lock and opened the door. The room was dark save for the thin stream of moonlight spilling in through the window. The bed was untouched, the covers still neatly tucked in. But the old woman was nowhere to be found. Julia stepped inside, her flashlight flickering as she scanned the room. There was no sign of the woman, no bags, no belongings, nothing. It was as if she had never been there. Suddenly the door slammed shut behind her. Julia jumped, spinning around, her flashlight flickering wildly. The room felt alive, a suffocating pressure closing in from all sides. Her breath quickened as she heard a soft, steady breathing coming from the corner of the room. She swung the beam of light toward the sound, her heart nearly stopping as it illuminated the old woman. She was standing in the corner, her back to Julia, facing the wall. "Ma'am?" Julia's voice wavered. The old woman didn't move. "Are you all right?" Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the old woman began to turn. Her head twisted first, then her body followed, revealing a face that wasn't hers. It was younger, gaunt and twisted with a look of sheer terror, her eyes wide, mouth open as if screaming. Julia backed away, but her feet felt rooted to the floor. The room grew darker, the walls closing in. The figure stepped forward, but her feet didn't seem to touch the ground. Julia tried to scream, but no sound came out. She stumbled backward, her flashlight clattering to the floor. The last thing she saw before the darkness swallowed her was the old woman's face inches from her own, whispering, "I was born here, and I never left." The next morning, the cleaning staff found the door to room 206 wide open. Inside the bed was untouched, but the air was freezing. Julia was nowhere to be found. When the hotel manager checked the logs, there was no record of anyone ever checking into room 206 the previous night. No old woman, no guest, just a key sitting on the counter as if it had never been taken.